In your lesson today, you're going to have an introduction to percentages, and we're going to focus on what the part is, what the percent is, and what the whole is. And we're going to start off by looking at a couple of figures. In 1a, it says for each figure below, express the shaded part as a percent, a decimal, and a fraction. Okay, and so looking at my first picture here, I can see there's 4 equal parts, and 3 of them have been shaded in. And the easiest one to start with is the fraction. So I would say that 3 out of the 4, or 3/4 of that figure, has been shaded in. In order to turn a fraction into a decimal, well, this is what we've done before. Remember that a fraction represents division. This means to do 3 divided by 4. If you do 3 divided by 4, you end up with 75 hundredths. So 75 hundredths of the figure has been shaded in. And now we need to turn that 75 hundredths into a percentage. Well, the word percent means per 100, and so that means I would multiply this value by 100 to turn it into a percentage. When you multiply by 100, the decimal point moves to the right 2 places. Once, twice, this would be equal to 75%. 75% of the figure has been shaded in. In the second figure, I have 5 circles, and 3 of them have been shaded in, so as a fraction, 3/5 of the picture has been shaded in. When you turn 3/5 into a decimal, 3 divided by 5 is equal to 6/10. And then when you turn 6/10 into a percentage, multiply this number by 100, move the decimal to the right twice, once, twice. That's going to be equivalent to 60%. So 60% of the figure has been shaded in. In 1b, it says, write a proportion that compares the part shaded to the percentage for each ratio. Okay, and so what we're going to do, we're going to compare the part that was shaded to the whole figure. The part to the whole. And in our first picture, we knew that 3 of the 4 parts were shaded in. 3 was part of the figure, 4 made up the whole shape. And that was equal to, well, as a percentage, that was 75%, which means 75 out of 100. Okay, and so in this case, it's going to be our percentage, which is also always out of 100. In the second picture, again, we're comparing the part to the whole, and we saw that 3 out of the 5 circles were shaded in, so 3/5 was shaded in. And as a percentage, that was equal to 60%, which means 60 per 100, 60 out of 100. And so again, this is looking at our percentage out of 100. So part over whole equals the percentage out of 100. In each proportion, the first ratio compares the part shaded to the whole. The second ratio shows the percent out of 100, which is called your rate. So this part right here was the rate. Same thing here. The percentage was the rate. The rate can also be written as a decimal. Okay, so label the part, the whole, and the rate in each ratio above. Well, we already labeled the rates. The rates were those percentages. And the part was 3, the whole was the 4. And in our second picture, 3 was the part that was shaded in, and the whole picture was 5. In the following problems, we're asked to identify the part, the whole, and the rate. And the rate's the easy one to pick up. That's your percentage. Okay, so in part A where it says, what is 15% of 200? Well, I know right here that 15% is my rate. Okay, and now I just have to pick out the part and the whole. We're trying to find 15% of 200. Well, the 200 right here, of 200, that's going to be the whole value. 15% is less than 100, so we're looking for what is the part that is missing. Okay. In the next example, it says 25% of what number is 50? Well, again, 25%, the percent is my rate. Okay, 25% of some number is equal to 50. So 25% is the 50, which is only part of the value. Okay, since it's less than 100%, this 50 is part of the value. 25% of what number? I don't know, but that's going to be my whole value. My unknown is the whole value. In question C, 20 is what percent of 40? 20 is what percent of 40? Well, our rate is the unknown there, so the rate, the percent. 20 is some percent of 40. Well, 40 is the whole value, and 20 is only part of that. 20 is only part of that. And then finally in letter D, 15% of what number is 75? 15% again is your rate. All right, 15% of some number, so this is going to be my whole value. And then that 15% is equivalent to 25. It's only part of the whole value. And so when we're looking at this here, again, the rate's the easy one to pick out. The rate is always the percentage. Percentage is your rate. In order to pick out the part is always attached to the word is. What is? That's your part. Is 50? That's your part. Is 75? That's your part. For the whole value, that's always attached to the word of. Of 200 was the whole. Of 40 was the whole. Of what number was the whole. So those are some little keys that you can use to pick out the part, the rate, and the whole. Now, in order to answer those questions on the other side, we have to become familiar with the percent equation. The percent equation is always going to be set up the same way. It's part equals the rate or the percent times the whole value. Part equals rate times whole. The percent must be written in decimal form, so it's important to remember how you write a percent as a decimal. Now that we know the percent equation, we can practice answering these questions. And remember, it's part equals the rate times the whole. And so when we set these up, we again have to remember what we're doing here. What is the part is the unknown. So I'm going to put P for part equals. The rate was 15%, but remember the rate has to be written in decimal form. In order to turn your percent into a decimal, take your decimal point and move it back 2 spaces. And this is going to become 15 hundredths. And the whole value was 200. Okay, so to get the part, I have to do 15 hundredths times 200, which is going to give me a value of 30. In part B, again, part equals rate times whole. The rate, 25%, change that into a decimal. That's going to be 25 hundredths. Times the whole value is unknown. And that's equal to the part, which is equal to 50. So I'm trying to figure out what this value of x is. This is a one-step algebra problem. To get x by itself, we're going to divide both sides by the 25 hundredths. 25 hundredths divided by itself is 1, leaving us with x. 50 divided by 25 hundredths is 200. So the whole value in this case was 200. In example C, part is, that's your 20, equals what percent, we're looking for the rate this time, so I'm going to put R for rate, times the whole value of 40. And once again, we're trying to get this value R all by itself. This again is a one-step algebra problem. To get R by itself, we would have to divide by 40, do it on both sides. 40 divided by 40 is 1, leaving us with R on the right. 20 divided by 40 is 5/10 or a half. Now, it said, what's the percentage? So now we have to take this decimal and write it as a percentage, and that's going to be equal to 50%. 20 is 50% of 40. In letter D, again, our rate is 15%, write it as a decimal, which is 15 hundredths. Of what number? So times some W, whole value that we don't know, equals the part, which is going to be 75. Well, we've got to get W all by itself, so we've got to divide both sides by that 15 hundredths. And when we do that on the left, 15 hundredths divided by itself is 1, leaving us with W the whole. And when we do 75 divided by 15 hundredths, we end up with a value of 500. 15% of 500 is equal to 75. In question 3, we're told that in a mall parking lot, 60% of the cars are blue. If there are 300 cars, how many of them are blue? So we're going to find the part, the whole, and the rate, and we're going to use the percent equation to solve this problem. Again, the easy one to pick out is the rate. 60% of the cars are blue. So in my equation here, for my percentage, 60% as a decimal is 60 hundredths, or just 6/10. And we were also told that there were 300 cars in the parking lot. That's the whole parking lot. So the 300 is going to be the value of the whole. And we're looking for what part of the cars are blue cars. And so to answer the value of P, we have to do 6/10 times 300. P is equal to 180. And so we know that there are 180 cars that are blue. 180 cars that are blue. In example 4, we know that Nick has 20 baseball cards, and 40% of his cards are players on the Washington Nationals team. How many of his cards are Nationals players? So again, find the part, the rate, and the whole. The rate is right there, our 40%. Turn that into a decimal. That's 40 hundredths, or just 4/10. And we're also told that Nick has 20 baseball cards. That's all of his cards, so that has to be the whole value. We have to figure out what part of them are Nationals players. So to figure out the part, we're going to do 4/10 times 20. And when you do that multiplication, you come up with 8. And so we know that 8 cards are Nationals players. In number 5, we're asked what number is 75% of 64? So we're going to use the keywords that we looked for before. Again, the rate is the easy part. That's your percentage. So in our equation, 75% is the decimal 75 hundredths. All right, of 64, the word of is always attached to the whole value. So I'm going to substitute 64 into the whole. And what number is attached to the part. And we don't know that value, so we're going to call it P for the part. So to get the part, do 75 hundredths times 64, and that gives you a value of 48. So 48 is 75% of 64. Number 6 says that Jack and Diane had a $40 lunch bill. If they wanted to leave a 15% tip, then how much money would the tip be? So our 15% tip, that's our rate. 15% is 15 hundredths. And they had a $40 lunch bill. That is the whole bill. So $40 is our whole value. P, the amount that we're going to leave for a tip, is what we're going to calculate. So 15 hundredths times 40 will give us that value. When you multiply, you end up with a value of 6. So we know that the tip will be $6. The tip will be $6. In number 7, we're told that 36 is 24% of what number? So we've got to figure out what we don't know. Well, I know the rate, 24%. In my equation, that's going to become 24 hundredths as a decimal. 36 is, well, if you remember, the word is always attached to the part. So 36 is the part. We are looking for the whole value. That's what's missing here. Of what number? The word of is attached to the whole. And so in order to answer this problem, we've got to get W all by itself, which means we're going to have to divide both sides by that 24 hundredths to get W all alone. When you do 24 hundredths divided by itself, that leaves you with just W on the right. And 36 divided by 24 hundredths is 150. And so we can say that 36 is 24%. 36 is 24% of 150. In number 8, we know that 25% of what number is 60, so we can substitute in for our rate, 25 hundredths as a decimal. Is 60 is attached to the part, and so again we're looking for the whole value of what number. To get W by itself, we'll have to divide each side by 25 hundredths, and that's going to leave us with W on the right. 60 divided by 25 hundredths is 240. And so 25% of 240 is 60. In number 9, 9 is what percent of 45? 9 is the part, so that's 9. Of 45, of is the whole, so that's the value of W, the whole. And the percent is what we don't know, so I'm going to call it R for the rate. So 9 equals R times 45. Divide by 45, and we get 2/10 for R, which is 20%.